All right, here is our transitions. So check out this terrible project. It is pretty boring. Well, now it's really boring. I'm not sure why it's completely black. What? That's weird. It like opened up in a new window. I'm not sure what's going on there. Let's try again. Hey, take a look at this terrible project. Ah, look at that. It is a scene of some lovely cottage in the Tuscan hills in Italy. And when you press space, it goes to nighttime. But it's like pow, like it's so fast. Like in a movie, if it's like, you want to like switch from one scene to the next, maybe it would fade to black and then it would fade out again and it wouldn't be a movie anymore. Or it wouldn't be that kind of situation, right? So I don't want to just like instantly change, like almost like time just fast forwarded instantly, right? I want to have a transition. So I'm going to show you how to make it kind of fade to black, then switch, and then fade back in with the new scene. Again, this is required for those of you who are doing the visual novel. It doesn't have to be fade to black, just so you know. You can do a bunch of different things. It could fade to white. There could be like static, like you change the channel. It could be all whatever you want to think of. I think of I don't know, the old Transformers cartoon when it would switch from one scene to the next. There would be like this like new like thing would slide in, and then the Autobot symbol would change to the Decepticon symbol, and then it would slide out. Like all these things are sort of the same technique will be required to do them. So you can get crazy with this, but I'm just going to show a fade to black effect. So I'm just going to zoom into the code here. To make something fade to black, I'm going to make a sprite that is a big black rectangle. It's just a black rectangle that covers the whole screen. Look, here it is. And it's going to create the illusion that we're fading to black. Usually if you think about fading to black, you think about things going away, not like blackness, like coming back and like covering things up. But that's how this is going to work. So we're going to make this sprite that gets put on top of everything. And here's its reset script. Check it out. I make sure I anchor it to 0, 0, so that when I press green flag, it like if I clicked and dragged it by accident, it gets put back to the middle. And then here's the ghost effect. The ghost effect is going to be the thing that allows you to fade out and fade things in. And it's not the only way. Remember, there's lots of possibilities, so please feel free to innovate on this. But if you just want to get the criteria point, yes, I got it to work. Like it's already pretty complicated as it is. Medium level complicated. So where do you find this ghost effect? It's just under looks. It doesn't matter what Scratch version you're using, it has it. And there's things like change and set. They look like color effect, but if you drop down, you can find the ghost effect at the bottom. You all know what ghost effect is from Photoshop. It's opacity. You remember how you click and drag the opacity slider, and you can make things invisible? It's the opposite of opacity. So opacity, when it's at 100%, it's completely solid. And when opacity gets dragged to 0, it's invisible. It's the other way around for ghost. So it's like anti-opacity. So when ghost effect is at 100, it is invisible. And when ghost effect is set to 0, it is 100% visible. But somewhere in between there, it'll be like some amount of visible. So if ghost effect is set to 50, it'll be half see-through, half visible, or half invisible, half visible. If that makes any sense. I'll just show you. I'll just set the ghost effect. Watch this. Here it's at 100, right? That's invisible. If I set it to 50, the screen will get kind of gray because it's like half visible now. And if I set it to 0, it'll be completely visible and will cover everything up. So can you imagine what might happen if we used a loop to kind of like change it a little bit at a time over and over again? Yeah, that's going to be the trick. So for most scenes, unless you want to like fade from black to begin your game, for the most part, this black rectangle sprite, I call the fade curtain. Kind of reminds me of like the theater. There's a curtain that comes down and like does stuff. I started off as invisible, and then I have broadcast set up to make it fade in and fade out. So here's a fade out. Wait, I think I got them mixed up. Let's think about it together. Let's see if I screwed up. So if I want the scene to fade in, no, I want to fade to black, then I actually have to decrease it, don't I? Because I want to make it become visible. So I've actually screwed this up. I got to switch these around. Great demo, Mr. Pelche. Way to broadcast it on YouTube so everyone can see you're making a mistake. But here's the story here. I got the fade out now, which means it will eventually just decrease this 20 times by -5. Hey, if you subtract 5 20 times, you get from 100 to 0, right? So that's sort of the math that we're doing there. Yeah, Ario.
There's one problem with that.
Yeah, what's that?
You need to put a wait timer, otherwise it's going to happen all at the same time.
Turns out it doesn't. And the reason is because a repeat loop has a secret wait built into it. You'd be right about a forever loop. Forever loops don't have like a secret wait built into it, but a repeat loop actually does. You can't see it, but it's almost like there's a wait block at the bottom of it that waits for a certain amount of time. So check it out. But thanks, though. It's true, though. Sometimes you do have to worry about that for some things. Not in this case, though. So what I can do is when I want to switch the scene, I'll broadcast fade out, which means it'll go to black. And then I'll switch the scene, and then I'll broadcast fade in, so it'll become invisible again. And do you see the difference between the fade out? Here, watch. I'll double-click on fade out. No, first I'll turn it on. I'm going to double-click on fade out, and watch it fade out. You see that? Faded to black. And now if I click on fade in, it comes back again. See how that works? But you don't want the person to be clicking these things. You want to trigger them at the right time. So when's the right time? Well, it's probably when you press a button or make a choice. But I'm just going to automate it. I'm just going to make it happen. But you guys can broadcast those whenever you want to. It could be when you click a button. It could be 10 seconds into an animation and you want to switch to a new scene, but it's still in the animation. I just need to be able to broadcast those at the right time. So how do I do this? This is, when I press space. So the scene changes when I press space. So when I press space, it just, bad switches to nighttime. So what I'm going to do instead, when I press space, I'm first going to broadcast fade out. And I want that to finish. And then it's going to switch to the sort of the next thing. So I'm going to, it's a little bit complicated because I got other things that might happen as well when I press space. These things need to wait and things need to happen. So I'm probably going to change some of these triggers as well. Right now, all these different sprites just have when I press space, the background changes. There's I don't know where it is, badly hidden over in the corner here. So all these different things are kind of annoyingly, it's really annoying because I'm making you nauseous as I drag this all over the place. So all these different things have a space key trigger. It's not really convenient. The sun has a space key trigger. The moon has a space key trigger. And that works fine right now. But what I'd like to do is make it so that when I press the space, it'll fade out, then switch those things, and then fade back in again. So I'm going to turn off some of these space key triggers. And I'm going to keep one of them. I think I'll keep the background one. So when I press space, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to broadcast fade out. And I'm not going to do just broadcast. Check this out. I'm going to do broadcast and wait. And this is partially the reason why we do this. Transitions are great, but broadcast and wait is sort of what I secretly want you to learn from doing this. What broadcast and wait does that's different is that this acts like a wait block until all the things that receive it are finished their scripts. So this script will sit there and do nothing until whatever received fade out is done. So in other words, when I broadcast fade out and wait, then it'll start this repeat loop, and it won't. This script here won't go on until that repeat loop is done. Folks, does that make sense? What's the difference between broadcast and wait? Kind of. Let me say it one more time. It isn't obvious. It isn't obvious, and I totally don't blame you if you stop paying attention to me for a bit. But if you did, bring your brains back up here because it's pretty tricky. So here's. I can do an example with both. I could either do broadcast fade out, or I could do broadcast and wait. So I'll show you what happens if I do, say, broadcast fade out, switch to backdrop night, and then broadcast fade in. So watch what happens with this case. If I press space, I'm using fade out and wait. I mean, I guess I was already night, so that was pretty boring. But here we go. I'm going to press it again. All right? It makes sense, right? It waits. Before it goes to switch to backdrop, it waits for the fade out to finish. But watch what happens if I use just regular broadcast fade out. Okay, so this is just fade out.
Would this be part, is this part of the criteria?
Yeah, definitely.
For
Visual novel. Yeah. Although it's kind of a cool technique, so you might want to use it. So, okay, now I'm just using fade out broadcast, no wait. Watch what happens. Oh, that was kind of anticlimactic. Let's try again. Oh, it really didn't seem to do anything, did it? Broadcast fade out should have done something. I'll stop it.
oh, this is kind of sad.
Well, it really sucked, didn't it? That was terrible. Here, I'll try just pressing space. Oh man, now I'm really sad. What? Well, I'm not sure what's going on, but obviously it's not good, right? So what I expected to happen was you would see it switch to night, and then it would fade in while it was night, which kind of defeats the purpose of having the fade curtain. So I'm not too sure what I'm doing wrong here, what's gone wrong, but it definitely works with the fade out and wait. So that's sort of important to use. So we're not quite done yet. If I do this, the sun's still there. That's dumb, right? It should be a moon now. So how do you get like that to trigger? You could hook it up to the space key and like wait a little bit of time or something like that. That would be fine. You can just time it out. How much time do you have to wait? Well, you could go and do the math and figure it out. Like I could type in 2 seconds and see, is 2 seconds good? No. 1 second. Try that and see. Well, I got nothing now, but no, not quite. So 0.75 seconds, and just kind of trial and error it. You could also use a broadcast. That was almost perfect. You could also use a broadcast to get the trigger instead of the space key. So now press space, and I come back, and then it's gone. So you see how the fade curtain is sort of like covers this thing up? And then you can make some changes, and then it fades away, and then you can sort of create that transition between things. So where's an example of when you can use this? So in my example projects, I guess I'll just save this. We still got about 3 minutes before this happens, this fire drill. It might take a little too long. But one thing you can do is when your characters go off screen and you go to a new place, a new backdrop, that would be a good time to have a transition where it fades to black and then fades in again. Or maybe some amount of time changes. I don't know if you remember Linnea's project where like the woman with the armor had to clean the person's house, right? It was like it faded to black and then it said 3 hours later and then it fades back in again. So this sprite here that's a black rectangle can have text on it. To have like a message of like, meanwhile, or like, a certain amount of time later, it can kind of give that message. And it can have multiple costumes as well to have multiple different kinds of messages about what you want to say. So at the end of the day, you're going to be responsible for adding in at least one transition somewhere in the project and try and find a place where that makes sense. I bet you won't have too much trouble finding where that goes. And I'll save this as a video so you can take a look at it again, because maybe you're going to be done your project. We're going to go for this fire drill. And then when you come back on Monday next week, you might be like, wow, I totally don't remember any of that stuff. So I'll make sure this gets put on YouTube for you to watch for next class.